Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that means it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my own dissonance in my own life. It's Tom. What's up?
Hello, friends.
So this
Di-
week, oh, go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
I was just say dissonance personified.
Yes, indeed. This week we're going to be talking about Ludonarrative Dissonance. That's right. It's time to get super deep and weird and nerdy on the chat. But first, we're going to talk about a lot of giant stuff. Oh, there's going to be so much giants.
Yep.
So let's start with the news before we get into that.
Rumor engine.
Yeah, it's a 40K thing. There you go.
Yeah, it's. I look at that and I'm like, oh, it's Eldar.
Or something. It does look like a Tyrannid-ish tail. Martin Orlando said that he thought the chain looked corn. I think it just looks like the chain that they tend to use when they use chain because they use the same
Yep.
ZCAD files for everything, and like you're not
Yep.
gonna resculpt a chain from scratch. You're gonna just you know
True.
use the
Copy
ZCAD
paste.
chain file.
They're gonna copy paste is what they're gonna do.
Right, right. So like, and by the way, that's not me bagging on them at all. Let me make that
No, 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 no,
100%
no.
clear. Like, yes, it looks like the corn chain. It also looks like some of the dock chains. If you look at
Yep.
those, it also
Yep.
looks like some of the Skaven chains of some of the later kits. Basically, it looks like the chain file that they use since they started printing in ZCAD, because they have two chain files. One has round links and one has rectangular links. And whenever they use the rectangular links, that's the one it looks like.
Weird.
So and look, I don't know. It's a weird tail thing. It looks like something is clearly pinned to the rock,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
you get
Yep.
the sense that I mean, in the weakest possible way, there's no way that Pitten is going to hold. That thing is
No.
absolutely getting ripped right off of there.
Yep.
But it like I have no idea. I do agree. I think Paul said it looks like Alice in Chains. Yes, if Alice became a weird Tyrannid monster creature, then dead on, dead on. Thank you. Yes, Mangler Chains. Yeah, another one that looks like that. Yeah. So my point being is that we've got nothing here. We've got a rock,
Nothing. It's just a whole lot of nothing.
right? And they tend to use the same scale files a lot as well. Like, yes, it looks like Tyrannid, but it also looks like a couple of other. Like, if you remember all the times when we saw something and said, "Oh, that looks like it's going to be this type of scaly thing, like Lizardmen,"
Yep.
and then it
Yep.
wasn't. It
Yep.
was just some other creature, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, but I mean, I'm sure Tyranids are due for some kind of new models at some point. I think a lot of their range is pretty aged as well. I have no idea.
I I think
But
it is a chain. I think it's a chain to Ragnarok.
a chain to Ragnarok. That's so we're like this is like its front leg being up. That's
Yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah. Yep,
Okay.
it's in like the striking, like hissing position.
Uh huh.
You know how they get like this like when spiders rear up
I've seen
the branch
spiders.
up.
Yes, I'm familiar with them.
Yes.
I'm familiar with
Yeah,
the
there you go.
concept.
Weird.
Cool.
I think that's what it is.
All right.
So yeah, that happened. We don't really know anything. And things that we do know about though,
Oh yes,
Giants are on pre-order this Saturday.
they are. The time has finally come. Oh, oh, brethren, the long wait, the longest of waits in AOS. I have to caveat that because somebody actually me and said, actually, I could hear him pushing their glasses up. They said, Sisters of Battle had to wait a lot longer, and I was like, okay, fair, true. That was truly the longest time between because that was Adepticon
Forever.
2018. They
Yep.
announced it, right? And they said it'll
Yep.
be out next year, and they basically like just made it out in 2019, right?
Just
So,
barely made it.
so
Yep.
that being said, this is the longest one in AOS, and yeah, I'm real excited. But we got to break this down. We can't talk about it all at once. All right?
Okay. Yep.
Okay,
Let's talk about the price.
I
Let's
agree.
start there.
It's where we start.
You know what? You know what? I think it's appropriate.
Wow, bold move. It's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see how this one works out for you. All right, so let's lay down what the prices are, Tom, shall we?
Yeah,
So
please.
the Mega Gargant is 195 US for that kit. making him currently having the title for the most expensive plastic kit, I believe.
Archeon will catch up. Archeon will catch up with him. They'll jack his price.
They already moved his price up, I think, on the last price increase. If they didn't, sure, he'll get like a 5% bump. But
yep.
I mean, they rotate a third of the stock every 3 years. It's like it's a pretty predictable thing. Like that's called keeping pace with inflation. Like it's not weird.
Right.
Like as somebody who oversees like one of my job responsibilities in my normal world is pricing, like you have these discussions, right? You do have to actually keep pace with the economy and with inflation and stuff. Now, anyway, but this is like the most expensive kit by far at 195, more expensive than Archeon, more expensive than Techless.
But do you know why it's appropriate?
I'm ready.
Because they're giant.
Because they're giant? Okay. So, and then we repackage the 2 giant kit. So you get 2 giants for 125. That's the other one, but go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, because so let me throw a hypothetical to you. Let's say that giants were getting dice.
Okay.
What would they?
They're not.
What would those dice? They're not. But what would those dice hypothetically look like?
I don't know, but I know what dice I ordered for my giants.
That's fair. Like what? Like 60 millimeter dice?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I ordered like big, giant, oversized dice for my giants. For my giants. Yeah.
But that's the point, right? Like it just has to be big. Like your army, if it's giant, it has to be big. So the price just has to be big.
Gotcha. So it's just it's in line. It's the meta narrative.
Yeah. It is meta with the army itself. Mm-hmm. The price is just appropriately sized to the army.
Sure. I mean, there is an argument in price theory that like you have to set your pricing. You don't like you wouldn't want to underprice things because then you can sort of damage your brand or whatever. But here's my honest statement. They made a mistake on this. Okay, I'm not usually one to lament on pricing. You know that.
Right.
I don't really care.
Right.
Like Techless being 170, I think is what he is. US. That sounds right. 105 pounds and 170 US. I think that's what he is. Okay, that's expensive. Yep. But like in general, that felt fine-ish. Like basically the $165 to $170 area for these big giant kits. Like that's what the
big one-off kits.
Or like Imperial Knights, the Dominus class and the normal class are this size or this cost. Okay. And you know, they're like in the 165, 170 range. I don't remember exactly what they are right now, US, but it's something like that. They moved up slightly from like they used to be 152 or 157. Yeah. And now they're like 165, something like that. Doesn't matter.
Sure.
The point is that like that's a very similar army, right? Because you might have like 4 little boys and 2 or 3 or like 3 big guys or 2 big guys and a couple armigers, whatever, something like that, or three knights. Like it feels very similar, right? We've made that comparison lots of times.
Sure.
And yet,
but that came out like 3 years ago.
Sure, but okay, like inflation isn't that fast.
Before Brexit.
Yeah.
No,
sure.
but like there's been a price adjustment from Brexit. Because like elves are like the most expensive they've ever been.
Sure, the elvish kits are more expensive, yes. But like here's why I think the $195 price tag's a mistake. Okay, ultimately.
Okay.
And why this should have been 170. Like that's what the price for this should have been. So whoever sets the pricing at GW, and I literally have no idea what this is or who has oversight of pricing. But hello, this is another free consultation, so I'm talking directly to you now, GW. You made a mistake on this price, okay? Like, all pricing decisions, I'm sure, I hope, at this point, everybody's familiar with the concept of a price curve, right? This is pretty basic economics. So, like, you can move your price way up, and then you'll sell fewer things. That's what happens, right? Or you can move your price way down, and you'll sell more things. And then across that, you draw a cost line, right? And then what's in between is your margin. Yeah? And, sure, there are people who deal in, like, very luxury services that have extremely high margins. And, or even extremely low margins, but they just rely on selling a few things, right? Yep. And basically they make the same amount of money with less effort. Right? That's why you do that.
Yep.
Right? And the problem with this is there's anchor pricing here in effect, right? Like we all have a concept in our head of what these kits should cost. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And you can talk all you want about bits or how complicated the design is or his size. He's not going to be taller than Archeon with the wings. He's like bits wise, he's only going to have the bits of the 3 specific giants, right? There's no extra bits like the old kit, right? He'll have, and we know that because we saw the sprues on Monday,
right?
And like by pricing him this high, they have simply put people off buying this army or buying multiples of this that they wouldn't have otherwise. And like all of my evidence is anecdotal, okay? I've heard plenty of people say it though, that like, oh, I was going to buy 3, I'm going to buy 2. For example, me, I put in an email on Monday, like before I ever saw pricing, that said I want 3 of these big boys. And then I saw the pricing and I said, you know what? It's got to be 2. And that price difference of like $25, $30 over what I was expecting was what made me do that.
For each kit. Because that's like a $60 price swing for you.
Sure, absolutely. And I wasn't willing to spend that extra money. Right? And if like it would have been 165, 170, sure, it would have been high, of course. But like that's what I would have expected, right? The current high price. This suddenly moved the goalpost like way out there, right? And this leads to the real problem that they had. So like if you're making an Archeon model and you way up price that, let's imagine Archeon just came out today and they priced him at 195. Okay. I'd be like, yeah, okay. Right? I actually wouldn't have as much of a problem.
You only have to buy him once.
Right, because you buy 1 Archeon ever, theoretically. I say that having 2 behind me on my shelves, but theoretically you only buy 1. And he's a unique character, and he's an extremely unique concept and sculpt, right? This dude on this big, weird, 3-headed monster. Like, it's a very unique sculpt that is very hard to sort of just kit bash or replicate. There's not a lot of other versions of him around on the market, right?
Yep.
The problem with pricing a giant, which is, like a pretty generic concept, okay? As that high, is that you're going to get exactly what happened. Mears Miniatures sent out an email blast the day the prices went public saying, hey, all of our big giants, 50% off this weekend.
I saw that.
Right? Like, you're going to get people and like, so I'll quick advance to my pick of the week. There's somebody wrote up a whole blog of like alternatively lower priced giants. There are reasonable facsimile giants right now on the market you can get for $10 to $30. $10 to $30. Okay?
Yep.
That is crazy different. That's not like, we're a little bit off. Right?
No, but what's really insulting about this though? Like, let me put a pin on it though. What is really insulting is that like the small giant kit
going from 75 the last time that double box was released to 125 when it's released now. I agree.
Yeah, and well, not only that, like it's not that spectacular.
No, they're obviously old bad sculpts. Now, I did pick up a couple of them this week because I figured out my different conversation I'll talk about during hobby time, but I figured out my conversion and I actually think I can make the old giants look sweet. But that's a different story.
Well, that's my point, is that like it was already a bad kit that that people weren't buying before, and you've just basically upped the price again.
Right. It doesn't make sense. And those little giants that are now like 62. Let me ask, go ahead.
Do we know that it's 2 giants for 125 and not 3? Do we have confirmation of that?
Yes, it's 2. Which we've also created a hot, like, it's like, because we saw the box, but like, hey, if everything turns out wrong and in fact somebody used the wrong art and there's 3 giants in that box, I'd be like, okay, never mind, I take it all back, that's perfectly fine, right? I would be okay with it. Like that would suddenly spin me around and I'd be like, yep, fine, good, I have no issues, I'm fine. But at any rate, it's the 2 giant box, which also creates the hot dog bun problem, but whatever, because you need, them in groups of 3s for your battle line.
Right. Well, no, what you have to do now is you have to buy 3 kits to get 6.
Sure. Or what you're actually going to do, which is maybe you buy one of those boxes and then you go buy any of a huge host of third-party alternatives to take the place of that one giant. Because it's the problem of the Mega Gargant, the big one, there's only a couple actual third-party giants that are at his size.
Yeah, that are
Okay,
scaled appropriately.
they're
Yeah.
scaled appropriately. That are up at like probably 18 to 20 centimeters, like 8 inches, something like that,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Um, and so there's not that many alternatives, and they're not, though, even the ones that are out there aren't hugely cheaper. But the little guys, there is a lot of options. Okay, starting
Right.
very cheap, like
Right.
in the range of I can buy 12 of these for the cost of one of those boxes. That's a real
Yeah.
number. I'm not. That's not me pulling that out of my tuchus. That's real. Okay.
Right.
That's problematic when you're that far off. So, like, they misstepped here on this pricing because they are going to sell less and drive people to third party kits. Period.
Yeah, and most large events that aren't in like in Warhammer World or in GW stores. Most GW stores can't run events, but they allow third party models, and so it was just a bad move.
No, I agree. Like it just didn't make sense to price these high, especially right now. Like it just given where everybody's at in the world, and I understand the financial pressure that they're probably under. I get it. They have shareholders, blah blah blah. They would have made more money is my point. Their misstep. Everybody says, "Oh, they're trying to price gouge us. They're trying to just make money." No. No,
They're trying to survive.
incorrect, people. Okay, like that
Yeah.
is wrong. That betrays an incorrect understanding of economics. All right, they would make more money selling them at the lower price. They like
Yes.
even with a smaller margin, they would sell more because they would drive less people to third-party kits. Okay.
Yep.
So there's your problem. Okay, when you if it just came out and it was like 160 or 165 or even 170, the same price as Techless, there would have been a little bit of like rabble or discussion about it, but it would have been like, oh, okay, that's the same price as all the other big expensive kits. I'm fine with that.
And I mean that was just what expectations were, right? We're like, oh, we got a big kit, it'll be priced the same as other big kits, and the answer is nope.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I don't understand what you mean, Paul, but $150 versus $30 is still 5 times the difference. The third party argument is a red herring. Now, I mean, I don't know what you mean by that, Paul. So and like there's to me it just doesn't make sense. They should have priced it down. They would have made more money. They misstepped. They're giving away profit. There you go. That's the final thought. I want them to be successful and make more money. This is the wrong way to do it. You've got to keep pace with the market. So there you go. Anyway, that's pricing. So there's a big pricing discussion.
Well, I'm not gonna buy them, so okay.
Yeah, I mean I already ordered 2, so whatever. You know.
Yep. I was already like skeptical. This was like I saw the prices and I just laughed. I was nope. Sure. A big hard no. Like I'm not gonna drop $200 as an ally to an army.
Sure.
Nope.
Sure.
Nope.
Again, totally fair.
Yeah. And so that was the price. Let's move on to rules.
Yes. So this was a fun roller coaster everybody took over the past couple of days, wasn't it?
It was a great couple of days.
Yeah, boy oh boy. By the way, yes, somebody said be right back buying stock in Mantic and Mears. I don't know if are either of those actually publicly traded companies. I'm not sure. But either way, the biggest final joke on this, the biggest sales boon and marketing push that Mantic has ever gotten was GW releasing this kit at this overprice. Okay?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, I understand what you're saying, Paul. You're saying it's still much more expensive than that? That's true. It is still much more expensive, but that's how anchor pricing works, Paul. When you find something that you expect outside of where you've anchored your price to, you look for alternatives. Okay? If you went to buy a cup of coffee and it was like 50 cents more than you normally paid, you're not going to not buy that coffee. There are quarter cups of coffee, but people like you, or 50-cent cups of coffee you can get. People are still going to pay $5, $6 at Starbucks, okay, or anywhere else. If you go in and it's 50 cents up, you don't go look for other coffee. If you went in and it was $13, you'd go get other coffee. That's anchor pricing. That's how it works. Okay?
Right.
It like pricing isn't a fundamental, like pricing in the modern economy is not a fundamental representation of the cost of the thing or the work that
It's
went
the
into it.
perceived value. Yeah.
It's a yes, it is a math equation you're doing and then guessing on and spinning the roulette wheel. Anyway, okay, so let's talk rules. So yes, uh,
So initially, let's talk about this.
yesterday.
So initially,
Mhm.
we got some of the giant rules, and they were lackluster. The War Scroll bits that we got.
Well, Tom,
Um,
they were just
yeah.
they were lackluster, but guess what? I've got a presentation. That's right, Tom.
Are we doing this now, or are we going to do this later?
Oh, we're doing
Are
this
you
now.
doing your power? We're doing your
Boom.
PowerPoint now.
PowerPoint. It's up.
PowerPoint. We're doing PowerPoint now.
Oops.
Sorry, folks. This is the production quality that you get out of this channel.
That's
I
right.
apologize.
Okay.
He couldn't even do Prezi. He couldn't even do Prezi. He had to do PowerPoint.
Yeah, of course I did PowerPoint. I made myself small here, so I disappear in the corner. And Tom, you're gone completely. I even made this is a better like this little screen I made for the initial thing is better than any thumbnail I've ever made for a video.
That is a true statement.
As I looked at this, I was like, oh wow, it'd probably be I should start making thumbnails like this. This is actually way easier. Okay, anyways, that's a joke aside, and also kind of not a joke. So, giant breakdown. Here we go. Okay. Don't worry, this isn't a long presentation, folks. All right, so let's take a look, Tom. Here is our Mega Gargant scroll damage. Okay.
Yep.
So this was off of this is the damage ranges out of the initial scroll. Okay?
Yes.
Just printed on the scroll yesterday. So the Kraken Eaters, like sort of average damage, I actually would call it 7 to 12. Right, but you could put 6 to 13. I actually think they cut too wide of a green percentage in here. Okay, I tend to take the middle, like 50-ish to 60%. They go a little farther, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We'll use the green numbers to keep it simple. So 6 to 13, the War Stompa 7 to 15, the Gatebreaker 9 to 18. Okay?
Sure.
Now, important note with the War Stompa. That's his damage, assuming he ramps himself up to 10 attacks. Meaning he is uncharted and has at least 6 models within 3 inches of him.
Sure. Makes sense.
Okay. 6 models isn't that hard often, so I felt like, okay, it's reasonable enough to put him at 10 attacks. If you put him down to 8, the number he'd be at attacking a single monster or something, his damage drops to the same curve as the Kraken Eater.
Fantastic.
Okay?
Yep.
Obviously, the Gatebreaker, this does not have the Gatebreaker's bonus damage figured in. Okay. Like the Gatebreaker does +1 damage to people who are garrisoned or in terrain. This does not have that figured in, to be clear.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Nor does this have any other bonuses. This does not assume rerolling ones. This is just the scroll attacks.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Yep. And then your Man Crusher, which is the new, basically, the little giant. We'll call him Baby Giant. One of them is basically 2 to 8 damage. Not great.
Yep. Nope.
Not great.
Nope.
3 of them, however, is the highest damage in the army at 11 to 20. Okay?
Look at those bad models performing.
Yeah, they are the highest damage in the army. So this was the original numbers. We all got this. I did this little math breakdown. And people lost their ever-loving minds. What was your... But let's say it this way. What was your initial thoughts, Tom, when you saw these numbers? Like, fair dinkum, what did you think?
I thought... Honestly, I saw it, and it was just like, oh, look, it's going to bounce off of a skink screen. Like that's initially what I thought. I was like, oh, I'm not concerned about these guys. Yep.
Now, we got some other cool little tidbits, right?
Sure.
Like the fact that the Gatebreaker, my favorite one, that's the one with the hood, everybody who's keeping track at home.
Yep. And the portcullis loincloth.
Yeah. That's the one that can destroy terrain. Oh,
faction terrain.
My God. Tom, you saw me. I was going nuts when I saw that, right?
Because
You know how much I hate faction terrain and want to destroy it all. Okay?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I told you like in the chat, I said this to Vince. I was like, this army, like I almost want to buy this army now for the meta motivation of just running around and smashing IDK boats in
Absolutely.
Sylvaneth Wildwood.
Your boat? No, it's not. Your stupid Sylvaneth Wildwood gone. It's
Nope.
rubble now. You're teleporting nowhere. You want to know where you're going? Nowhere. That's where you teleport. Skaven Gnawhole, boom, collapse that in, crushed, gone. Okay. How I cannot wait to destroy Wildwoods. I'm not even joking. Like I was like, well, I'm running Gatebreakers. Like that's pizza oven. You're dead. Like that thing's gone. I'm crushing that thing. Okay.
Well, I mean, they'll just burn it. That's not a problem.
Sure.
They can make it go.
You
away
better
own.
hurry. They better get them pizzas out of the oven because I'm coming. Okay.
So good.
That OBR obelisk, that thing is. I am toppling that over. My boys are just pushing down that massive phallus. That's done. That's done. Okay. Yeah, this was the base numbers. I was excited for some of the stuff, and ultimately my belief was, okay, there are 35 wounds on a 4-up save.
Right.
We didn't get to see their whole scrolls, so we don't know if any of them have, sort of extra defensive abilities like on the scroll, right?
Yeah, like any damage shrugs or anything like that. Yeah.
Sure. Yep.
Which all that would make sense. Like if they're like, roar with the pain or something. Like I could see something like that.
Yeah. They could have it on scroll. It could be in an allegiance ability. It could be in one of their sub-factions because we haven't seen the rules for all of that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, but everybody was freaking out. And I said, I'm going to do these numbers and I want to show them to you. We shouldn't freak out. Caveat, I would expect these to change. When you look at a lot of the base numbers, they're not that impressive.
Right? Yeah, and some folks were pretty vocal about it on Twitter. And it was funny because, somebody had brought it up and I just said, I'm just not impressed as the war scroll stands. And it was so funny because I laid out the math of on a charge, I think it was a man crusher.
A single man crusher, yes.
Does on average 4 damage to 6 damage is your normal average, right?
That's right. Yes, that's the middle that's the middle of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I was like, he bounces off a screen of skinks. And I was like, that just doesn't feel very giantish to me. Now, and so I posted this and everybody was kind of him hawing and, because it's massive club does 1 damage.
Mm-hmm,
what?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, but it was so funny because then right immediately after that I added a tweet though. And I was like, obviously this doesn't take into account the fact of other additive layers like allegiance abilities and battalions and items, which we haven't seen yet. And I said, so this evaluation absolutely could change depending on what drops. And within 30 minutes, the article dropped of me tweeting that.
Of course.
And so I immediately went back in and I was like, and clearly we didn't have to wait long for that and just reposted it. Because the reality is that with the new allegiance abilities that were revealed today, it changes the math dramatically.
Yeah, it does. Now, let me talk about 2 other little rule things we saw. They do have a timber ability where they fall over and damage people. I hate that that's a roll-off. Okay?
Yep.
It should just be a thing I get to do with my fun model. When it falls over, I get to then deal extra mortal wounds. Come on, it's a 500-point model. I've got 2 of these. Can I please just do my extra fun thing? So I hate that it's a roll-off. That should not be a roll-off. That actually made me kind of angry. It's just they add extra stuff like that. That's a thing that can literally happen once per game, and you just lost your toy, right?
Right.
Then rolling.
Let them have a.
Yeah, let you have a thing. You should win a little for losing, and making it a 50-50. That's just bad design.
It lets the enemy win for winning.
Yeah, it would be here's the equivalent. It would be if Blood Tithe worked like this. When a unit dies, roll off. If you go higher, you get a Blood Tithe point. No.
Right.
Right? No.
Right.
Blood has flown.
And if they go higher, they get a Blood Tithe point they can spend on other things.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
they get a triumph.
Yeah, they get a triumph.
That's the equivalent of,
right.
That's the equivalent of what this is. I agree.
Yeah. So I don't like that rule. But that's fine. So today we got to take at the allegiance abilities. We're gonna go to the next slide.
Yep.
And so we're gonna start with the Stompas. I'm gonna break down the Stompas and the
By the way, I wish you would have scaled those damage ranges appropriately.
What do you mean?
like that 11 was the same on all 5 charts. So you can actually see appropriate scales, because you said the Man Crusher set of 3, but it doesn't actually scale appropriately. Like 11 doesn't line up all the way down the bar on the 5.
I see what you're saying, like vertically.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Like on the prior slide.
I mean, it has to do with where the bar starts, right? Because as the min goes up, it moves around. But that's fine. Good notes for next time, Tom, when you put effort into making a presentation for this show.
You are welcome.
Okay. So let's talk about the Stompas. We got our Legions abilities. First and most important thing, we've got a knockoff of the Ogre ability, but it's Mightier makes Rightier.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Still not called Large and in Charge. It's just sitting out there. It's just sitting out there. Okay. Like, still exists. Still totally doable. So just to answer a couple questions I saw flying by in the comments. Do any of the allegiance abilities work if you're allying these guys in as mercs, or do you just get the base war scroll? I mean, if they're allied as per normal ally rules, then no, none of the allegiance abilities would transfer. Exactly what, but these are like unique characters that you ally into the other 3 Grand Alliances. So what they take with them, we have no clue, right? They could take some things with them. They could be special. They could have tons of extra rules, because they're all unique characters, like very specific ones. Like, here's the named giant who works with order. Here's the named one who works with death. Here's the named one who works with chaos. So, okay.
Yep.
Cool. So Stompas are really the one most about man crushes, about a bunch of the little dudes.
Yep.
And so I reprinted the baseline here of the Man Crusher from our previous one, just so we have it as reference.
Yep.
And their basic ability is, if they're attacking a unit of at least 10 models, they get +1 to damage on all of their attacks. So their club becomes 2 damage, most importantly, but the other ones matter too. And if they're attacking a unit with 20 models, they get +2 damage. Whoa.
So good. So good.
Whoa, that damage change is dramatic. So we go from 11 to 20 for a unit of 3, to 19 to 33, to 27 to 46.
Yeah.
Woof. Those are big changes. Big changes.
You have my attention.
By the way, the reason, just some people might be wondering, why is the damage so spiky? Because you notice here, Tom, how it says like 5% and then 2-2 and then 6 and then 2-3 and then 6 and 6, like why it spikes like this. It's because of the headbutt attack.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And how that's grouping of where it hits and misses.
Yep.
So, I mean, damage-wise, suddenly these 3 man crushes, they can get there. This is... So I'll put this in very stark... I'll put this in exactly equal terms. If you have a unit of 40 Storm Vermin, that's 400 points, right? So pretty close to what these guys are. And
yeah, but like, you're going to assume the buffs that they get are from other pieces that's going to cost points.
Correct.
So,
and then you have a Claw Lord that's 100 points. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
So if I give them the Claw Lord buff and a command point for rerolling ones on a hit, okay?
Yep.
Which is pretty standard how you attack with, like, that's not actually unusual. If you're going to use 40 Storm Vermin, you have a Claw Lord escorting them around, and you're going to, like, pop the command ability and then pop to give them rerolling ones. Like, that's how you play Skaven. And with Storm Vermin. And their average damage is exactly the same. It's like 30 to 43. It's
awesome.
Slightly in. So, like, that's about equivalent points-wise. So I looked at that and I was like, huh, okay.
And they have similar wounds as well.
Yep.
Like, they're scaled appropriately. Yeah.
Yep. So I was actually really happy to see that, like, similar take and blah, blah, blah. Similar wounds. Kind of very... So, like, okay, that felt like suddenly in line. The other thing we learned is, of course, that your... Yes, Mightier makes Rightier. I never finished talking about that. So your basic Little Giants count as 10. And your big giants, your mega gargants, count as 20 models for objective taking. Yep. How do you feel about that? The fact that they just took the ogre rule and said, yeah, that, but more.
I mean, it's just lazy.
Sure.
I mean, like, the right answer to me was they use their wound count.
Yeah, I never liked the wound count, I'll be honest.
And that's fine. But what they did was just simply steal.
Sure.
And like, that has less value to me.
Agreed. I kind of wish they had, like, here's where I come down on it. I don't. It's a completely neutral, balanced bar for me. Like, I don't hate it. It doesn't bother me in any way. Okay. But it also doesn't thrill me. I would have loved if they would have come up with a different taking mechanic. Like, if
Sure.
a giant is charging, in that turn, they automatically control the objective. Okay?
Sure.
And
Yep.
if the giant is alive and has done at least X number of X amount of damage, it
Yep.
just has it just automatically controls the point, right? Because it's still active and fighting and scary.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, like, if it did at least 5 wounds or 10 wounds, or pick your number, right? Then it just automatically takes the point. Something like that. But whatever. That's just sort of a thought off the top of my head. There could have been 10 other ways to design that, obvi. So, okay.
Yeah. It's okay. Like, it's fine.
It's fine. Exactly. That's what I said. It's fine. It's not great, because it's like, okay, well, that was kind of Ogre's thing. But it's,
Poor Ogre.
competitively, it's strong. It's real strong. It's crazy strong, as a matter of fact.
Because, like, the difference with mine was, like, if it was wounds based, then it would scale down. But now you have to put these guys in the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Any of these giants at 1 wound still counts the same way. As any monster truck BCR player will tell you,
Right.
They often win games by retreating in turn 4 or 5 onto an objective with 1 wound left, and suddenly counting as 10, right? Like, it's just boom, just huge.
Yep.
Especially late game. Other thing I want to mention on this slide, down at the bottom, if everybody can see the Man Crusher rock throwing, we also learned that there is a battle trait. It's not a command ability to do the basic thing.
Sure.
But the War Stompa can make the little giants, the Man Crushers, throw rocks. So the big giant Stompa can make the baby giants throw rocks. And they get D3 attacks on 4-up, 3-up, neg1, D3 damage. This is the damage chart for that. Can everybody see this? Can everybody see how there is a 24% chance of doing 0 damage with that attack? That it is the highest percentage chance outcome?
Yep.
Yeah. That's nothing. And I wish they hadn't printed it. And, like, please stop printing rules that make me roll a lot of variable dice for nothing. Right? Because first I've got to roll 3d3. Okay, this is how many attacks I get. All right, now I'm on 4s. Okay, I missed with half of them. Now I'm on 3s. Okay, I wounded with 2/3 of them. Now you save. Okay, you shave 1/3 of those off. Now I roll D3 damage. Ugh. All to do probably 2 damage. Right?
Yep.
That is a lot of work to do 2 damage. Way too much dice rolling. Way too much. Like, it should have just, if they were going to go for this, just go for, like, the rock gut troll thing. They throw rocks. 2+. It does, like, a D3 mortal wounds.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Easy. Yeah. Or just does a D3 mortal wounds, because it's giants throwing stones. Like, fantastic.
Which, by the way, given your inclination to want to destroy, like, all the terrain in the world.
Yeah.
You really need to buy, for the basing for your giants, a bunch of faction terrains.
Yeah, and just break them up.
And break them up and put them on all your bases.
Oh, God, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Now, as has been pointed out, also in the Man Crusher, that's if you have all 9 of them, if you're using the command ability. If you have all 9, if you have 9 of them, so you got 3 units of 3 and 1 War Stompa, that would be your army. So you have a 10 model army. Kind of the biggest you would tend to run this army as.
Yep.
And they all throw and they're all in range, then their damage becomes 4 through 12. Now, as they printed the ability today, the +1 and +2 damage does apply to this.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
Now, I don't know if that's real, because they rewrite those rules boxes, they don't copy-paste them out of the book. Okay?
I mean, it's not real, but we can pretend like it is. Like, even if it currently works, it won't.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. If the +2 damage thing is real, then it goes from, like, the worst ability to incredible. Okay?
Right.
Because it triples the damage.
You thought that the skull cannons with their modified attacks was good. Just wait till you see these rock throwers.
Yeah, I don't have the chart up here, but it literally goes to, like, 11 to 37 or something like that, becomes the modal outcome. Okay?
What kind of giant army do you have? A ranged one.
A ranged one, yeah. Like if you kick that on and everybody throws rocks at units of 20 or more models, I mean you can easily wipe out one unit at the top of one, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So it's quite a lot of damage for them to just do. Anyway, that's Stompas. This is a high damage one. This was interesting. Okay, Breakers. Just quick like. What I liked about Breaker was they had a bunch of different interesting ways to turn on +1 to hit, which I was hoping to see because actually these guys, like having +1 to hit is really important. This army is super susceptible to things like netters. Okay,
Yep.
their damage drops like a rock against negatives to hit because they only have one model, right? And a lot of those, and they have oftentimes a low attack profile number, which means their damage gets super swingy, right?
Yep.
And so I was very happy to see a +1 to hit. Now it's not like universal across the board, but then again, as I said, we haven't seen all the command abilities, all the magic items, all the artifacts, all the everything. We still have so much rules we haven't seen, right?
Yep.
But I will say that when you look at the Man Crusher breakdown, so again, 3 of them previously were doing 11 to 20. If you give them +1 to hit and they're attacking their +1 to hit target, it goes up to 15 to 24. Still quite respectable. And what I like about that is the Gatebreaker can also get it, and he goes up to from 9 to 18 to 12 to 23. Again, it's a noted improvement, right?
Yeah, totally.
And yes, it has to be that the +1 to hit has to be picked during list building. But at the same time, I feel like there are a couple obvious winners in there. For example, one of them was when attacking any unit that has a +1, +2, +3, or +4 armor save that isn't a hero, right?
Right.
Hero or monster, maybe. Great, fantastic, perfect, like wonderful. That covers a huge amount of things. But I actually think the real winner was whenever you attack a totem or a unit with a command model, right?
Yeah. Which is like almost all units that are units.
That are units, yeah, exactly. Anything that's not a hero. And the interesting part was people said, well, Ben Sava said this. Well, the enemy could just remove the command models, right? So you don't get that bonus in later successive attacks. And I'm like, one, I wasn't expecting to have to deal with later successive attacks. I was looking to kill the unit, Ben. I wasn't looking to fight multiple times. And 2, my answer there is great. Get rid of your banners and your musicians that are often doing really annoying things and or hurting my bravery or whatever. Like, it's a question of what a command model even is, but it's definitely at least the champion, musician, and standard bearer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So, like, if you want to get rid of all the special things that your unit has, I'm good with that. Like, if a Skaven player kills their bell ringer, no more retreat and charge.
Right.
Like you do impede units by killing that stuff. Though I don't have a slide for Kraken Eater because the only thing we really saw from them is that they up the take count from 10 and 20 to 15 and 30.
Ugh, so good.
Wow. All right, that's end of presentation. Ta-da. Okay.
Yep. They're tricksy.
Yeah, there. Tom's back on screen. Let me make myself back to my normal size here. Yeah, so like I was actually really interested in how all of these turned out. I thought they all had different gas. They all felt like interesting. There was kind of an interesting balance where it was clear, like with the Breaker army, I could see running 2 big breakers. Oh, the breakers give the ability to break terrain to the little boys too, which is nice.
Yeah.
So like I could see 2 breakers being the breaker army, and then 6 little boys.
Yeah. But I mean, that's not what you're gonna do, is it?
I think it's actually one of the better. Well, I mean, who knows? Because again, we don't have the whole picture. But based on what we know, that feels like the better build of that army, because those guys innately, the Gatebreakers innately carry more bonuses around. You have better chances to bust up terrain, right? And yet you've still got 6. You got 2 packs of 3s to swarm.
Yeah.
Right. Still. Because you're not blowing the damage off, right? In the same way you are with the like. In the War Stompas, you're running 1/9. That's just the 1/9 build every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. Yep.
Because the War Stompas themselves don't get all that bonus damage. Only their little boys get it.
No, so you just want as much damage as possible.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what's competitive. I mean, I agree. I think the War Stompa, like as not fun as that is, that may be a more competitive build, just because it's going to have all of the damage and it's going to count. It's going to have the most quote unquote bodies.
Sure.
On the flip side, like I really like from what I've seen of the Taker stuff. I really like.
Yeah, the Kraken Eater led one. I mean,
Yeah.
counting as 15 and 30 is
It's hot.
It's
hot.
so good because the problem with counting as 10, right, is that oftentimes people already have 10 models on a objective, right? And so like
Right.
and you can't always necessarily get to them to attack them. So if you just walk into the area, you don't claim it from them. But if you count as 15,
You
you
do.
auto take every unit away from chaff units without fighting them, right? And 30 is just bigger than a lot of elite armies can even generate units.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah,
Fire Slayers usually don't have 30 model units.
Right. They auto take from Hearthguard Berserker blocks.
Right. Right. Without fighting them.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, so I thought that was, interesting. The Kraken Eater might be like the big tempo game one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Which is probably not surprising given this, like the similarity or the relationship with the IDK, which is also tempo based.
Mm-hmm. Do we know how big the bases are? The big guys should be on 130 millimeter rounds. I don't know that 100% for sure, but I know that 99% for sure because of the pictures they've shared and the ability to just do math and literally copy paste that 52 mil wide base and go 1, 2.5. So.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah. I mean, 130 mil round is okay. It's not 160 mil round. There is a significant difference there between those two, like 30 millimeters. 30 millimeters increase is a big deal.
But are we sure that it's not 160?
As I said, I am 99% sure it's 130 based on unless all the pictures that I've seen of size comparisons are wrong.
Sure.
Okay. Which is possible.
Yep.
It's possible. But assuming those pictures that they share are the real size comparisons, it's 130 mils. Because you can take because they have a little giant standing right next to him with the base facing forward. Okay?
Right.
And that's 52 millimeters wide. If you could fit 3 of those in the other base, it's 160. If you can't, it's 130. It's pretty easy math, right?
Yeah.
So, there you go. That was a big giant breakdown for a show not about giants. But
I mean, our show is kind of about giants, though.
It is. And it was giants that got me thinking about this topic. So, I think that's finally all the news. Do we have anything else news? Was there anything else?
I don't think so. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there is. There's one more thing.
Yeah, this week the boxed heroes from Aether War are dropping. So the KO hero and the Endrin Master are on with the Aether rig, and the disc guy.
Yeah, disc
from
guy.
Zinch.
Disc man. Yeah. Zinch disc man. Yes. Yep, so that's good. Glad to see those guys are rolling out. Cool.
So, how many kits have we had in this year?
How many actual new kits? I have no idea. I mean, everything in LRL. The new giant, the new heroes, the other heroes. They packaged up all the other heroes, like all the other singlets this year.
Yeah, I don't really care. I don't count that. That's not real new kits.
I don't even remember.
It feels like we've had like 10 new kits.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, Tom. This year feels like 100 years. I have no sense of time anymore, Tom. I literally can't remember what January and February looked like anymore. I don't know what that world was.
I mean, like we got the Seraphon, but there's no kits other than terrain, which is not a real kit. I don't know. It just feels like it's been like a really lackluster year.
Do you suppose that might have to do with the fact that everything got delayed like 5 months due to a massive global pandemic?
Nah.
I think it does, Tom, because I'm pretty sure there was supposed to be actually a lot more releases this year, but they kind of had to move them back.
Yeah, so, we'll see about that.
So there you go. I mean, I'm excited because I can't wait for my Mortal Sinesh. I gotta get these giants done. But let's talk pick of the week, Tom. What would you like to share with everybody? You got anything to share with everybody this week?
I do. I'm gonna thank Chuck for this. He was very helpful in offering me a suggestion this week, and it was a video about someone who built like the biggest game board in the world. It's not
Nice.
really, but it's a huge, like it has like an 8 foot river. So I think the cross sections are 4 by 8, and there's 4 of those panels.
Okay.
So it's like a 16 by 8 table.
All right.
And he walks through in like 30 minutes all the steps to like build the board.
That's a big board.
And it's beautiful. Like it's functionally it's 4 boards.
Sure.
It's 4 4 by 8 boards. But then they all go together to be a big 8 by 16 board.
Yeah, it's cool.
And it's beautiful. Like the dude did some amazing work. I'm blanking on the name of the terrain on the channel. I will pull that up. I'm blanking on it. I just watched the video earlier today. I don't know. We'll have it in the comments below. It's amazing. You guys know how much of a sucker I am for terrain boards.
Sure.
And this is just truly beautiful.
Nice.
So
awesome. For myself, I'm going to direct everybody to the blog I mentioned earlier, which is Plastic Crack. Did a real nice comparison of, there you go. Sam's got your back. Sam's in the chat. He's got your back. Real Terrain Hobbies is the channel.
There it is. Go. Thanks, Sam. Yeah.
There you go.
Yes, it was fantastic. It was just the best.
Plastic Crack did a nice blog with a size comparison for alternative models. And, as I said, look, I'm all about, I like supporting GW. They've done right by me over the years, but I feel they priced this too high, and ultimately there are simply other options out there, and not talking about it does not make that go away. And a lot of people, especially the way the world is right now, are not looking to have a huge amount of disposable income to drop on that. And so there it is. So I linked the blog is already in the description. Did a nice job putting it all together. There you go. So you can go check out the alternatives. My existing giant army I have of like 10 giants is built out of a lot of other brands models, so I can't be a hypocrite. I've got Gale Force 9 giants, and I've got old Ultraforge giants, and all sorts of stuff in there, as well as classic giants, like the Alpion giants are part of my existing giant army, but that's fine. I should rebase all of those, so I just have an army ready to go day one while I build the new one.
That's not a bad idea, considering then you don't have to buy a bunch of the junk giants.
I want to buy the junk giants. That's what I'm saying.
I know.
Because I've got an idea.
I'm sorry. I might still have one laying around if you want one.
I do. 100% I want it if you got one. I was going to ask you, but I figured you sold it. But yeah, if you do, I absolutely yes.
I might have. I'll dig through my stuff.
Dig around. At any rate, because I think I still need a couple more. So, but at any rate, because I figured out what I want to do with these guys. Speaking of which, let's talk about hobby time. Tom, what have you worked on? Anything of value? You painted anything? I want to know where this bit is going.
Nope.
Okay. That's where I thought that bit was going. Like you were honestly checking for something, or if that was just going to end that way.
Nope, that's how it ended.
Okay.
I broke a piece of 3D printed terrain this week. Does that count?
No, Tom. Breaking things does not count. It's in fact exactly the opposite. But you should paint that terrain up.
We'll see about it.
You're ridiculous. Ridiculous, Tom. Paint something.
I mean, like, the reality is, like, we had a conversation about this in the chat today. Like, for me, I'm just so event-driven that, like, there's just... I don't know. Like, there's just no motivation. Like...
I understand. When you can't see an event in your future, it gets hard for you to hobby. Because you're driven by the goal line.
I am.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Events will come back, Tom, in time. So don't worry. They'll get back there. And then I can't wait to see you catching up. Like in a couple months, we're going to be having a show because we're going to an event, and you're going to be like, I gotta hurry and get all this stuff painted, and it's gonna be Tom behind the 8 ball again when he could have been using this time productively, but that's all right.
Yep. It's true.
Uh,
It's true. Someday I'll learn.
yeah, no time soon, I suspect. For myself, obviously, what I want to be doing is working on the Giants, but I thought it'd be fun to. I'm finishing up just the sort of last thing I kind of had hanging out to paint, which was this. I special ordered this Sister of Battle. The one that's actually it's her. It's the one behind me on the wall in this art print. I had to order her because I have this poster behind me, and it's one of my favorite Sisters of Battle art pieces. So yeah, so I ordered her and painting her up. She's almost done now. And yeah, it's a I've realized something painting Sisters of Battle, which is that I don't like painting Sisters of Battle. And that's mainly because they're too small and fiddly and full of nonsense. It's just like, it's the worst. I also finished up a Blood Angel for a tutorial. He came out really well. I don't normally, I've never actually painted a Blood Angel before, but I was like, yeah, we'll do one. This is how I do him, and I did a tutorial for him. And he came out actually really nice. Like, I was super jazzed with the way he came out, so. Oh, there you go. But all of this is just foreplay nothing. Because what I have here, Tom. Okay. What I have here. This is like a sprue from a soul grinder. This is some more soul grinder parts. This is a big bag of technical parts, okay, and machines and stuff.
Yep.
Gears and pistons and tubes. I went through all my bits and pulled all the gears, pistons, and tubes into this thing. And then I set aside all the other arm kits and stuff out of the many, many Imperial Knight kits I still have.
Yep.
And yes, because as I was laying my head down to sleep last, I think it was Thursday night, and I needed to get to bed. It was late. And I already don't sleep well as it is. And I was sitting there, and then suddenly, Tom, there was an epiphany. An epiphany.
Yep.
I saw, and the light from heaven opened, and in my head, I could see these giants. These strange, sort of like mechanically infused Frankensteinian monsters. And I realized what I wanted to do was like this Inquisition 28 sort of, half built. Like these things are creations of a wizard in the realms, right?
So you need to Google Siege Giant, which was part of the old Chaos Dwarf army.
Okay.
During the Turmerkin release.
Yep.
And what you are asking about, or what you're describing, is exactly what the Siege Giants in the Turmerkin Chaos Dwarf
Talking about
army.
the Forge World guy?
Yeah.
Not really. He's still too low tech.
Look at the art. Look at the art.
Yeah,
is what I'm pointing at.
Oh, the art.
Like,
okay,
yeah. So bringing that up. That's what I'm saying. So bringing that up to like AOS standards.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That said, if you do need any pipes from the Sector Mechanicus stuff, I have 800 bajillion.
Awesome. I very well may. Because it's this sort of very Blanchitsu Inquisition 28 concept. The idea for the army is that there's somebody behind them, right? Like, they aren't naturally occurring sons of Behemoth. These are, these are creations. Frankenstein's monsters or whatever. Of, like, that somebody stitched together. So I'm going to do their skin that still remains as stitched together skin. Like, I'm going to, either cut, I haven't decided yet if I want to cut it or just freehand on all the stitching and stuff like that.
Oh, you totally have to cut it and then get some green stuff and like create the ridges in the stitches.
Yeah, it's not like hard. It's actually real easy to do green stuff stitching and stuff, but it's also easy to paint it too. Like you can paint stitched together skin real easily.
Yep.
Like that's very simple freehand. So at any rate, having this, and so like I'll take their arms, I'm gonna bisect them and put metal joints like in the elbows, and then green stuff the upper arm into the metal and the lower arm into the metal. You know, have pipes coming out of their back and just all sorts of stuff like that. I'm just gonna go nuts, nuts, I tell you. And and literally, I'm gonna play Dr. Frankenstein with these guys, right? Like, it's a very meta concept of what I'm doing with the models, right? It's right on. You get what I'm saying here. This works on multiple levels.
Yep.
So I am real excited about this idea, like real excited, and I think with that I can make the old giants look cool because I'll be able to break them all up and put weird things in there, and just I'll have a good time. So there you go.
It'll be fun.
Absolutely, because like this is realistically an 8 model army. Yeah, it's probably how I'll run it. 2 biggies and 6 levels.
So you can do the work.
Yeah, like this is the time to do the work, right? Put it in.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that's that. Hopefully I'll have some giants, some of the little boys showing up here in the next couple days. So there you go.
It'll be fun. I look forward to seeing your army. So
I am very excited about it. I do like the idea of smashing up faction terrain underneath them because I hadn't thought of a basing scheme yet, and broken up faction terrain does seem awesome.
Well, and you can smash up like generic terrain, right?
Sure. I just do love the idea of having like twisted, broken actual faction terrain to display my hatred from it. Like, I want to go buy one of those IDK boats and just take a hammer to it, like a literal hammer. Like I will assemble it and then take a nice big flat sledgehammer and just smash it and then turn it into the basing material, and I will feel so good. I'll take a wildwood and just start busting trees straight down the middle.
Well, what I was going to say is, like, as terrible as it is, like, as terrible as it likely will be rules-wise, I could definitely see us doing something like this for like, Havoc next year.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, this would be a super cool idea for Havoc. And will one model at minimum have bolts in his neck and platform boots? One? I set aside a whole bunch of. I pulled out all of the. I have a bunch of the fun Adeptus Mechanicus or whatever, like those. They're electro priests and stuff. I have a bunch of fun bits from them, and so a bunch of them have like bolts that go in their heads and things like that. I pulled all that stuff out. Skaven bits and 40k bits and everything.
It'll be just so amazing.
Yeah, this is going to be a super fun project. It's just going to be going nuts on them. Just greebing these guys. I'm going to be greebing them hard. We're greebing over here. Okay. Tom, let's move to our feature segment, shall we?
Yeah, totally.
Let's talk.
I thought you'd never ask.
Indeed. Let's talk. Well, it's giants. This is going to be kind of the tone of the show for the next couple weeks. It's like when Slaanesh came out, and I was like, every show is kind of a Slaanesh show. Sorry, I get excited, and this is my show, so that's the way it works. When Tom gets real excited, we do the same thing for his armies. So
we don't. We don't.
Do. You talk about him forever, every time. You don't think you do, but you do.
We don't.
The number of times we talked about KO, my God. All right. So, anyways, so Ludonarrative Dissonance. This term was coined back in like 2007 in relation to BioShock
video game.
Yes. Yep. And it was specifically about how you kind of have... So video games have these two separate things going on. The story and the gameplay. And oftentimes they can... what the author was trying to get at and has pointed out and, has then happened in different games over time is the idea that the story is telling you one thing, right? Like, you're a kind, peaceful person who doesn't want to hurt people or who is out for the greater good or has this particular type of morality. That's the story. But the gameplay loop is that the primary gameplay loop involves you murdering hundreds and hundreds of people over and over again. Right?
Racially based home invasion.
Murder and theft, yes. Standard D&D. Yeah. D&D classically often had this, right? Where, like, D&D had Ludonarrative Dissonance before it was a thing. Where you were all like...
adventurers.
We're all lawful good and neutral good, and we just like break into other people's places, kill them all and take all their stuff, right? In the name of virtue. So whatever. Okay, so that's the basic idea. And by the way, this can happen in movies as well.
Yep.
You can have
the great example was obviously in Transformers.
Yes.
With the character of Michaela, played by I'm blanking on her name.
I don't remember her name either, but yes, we know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyways, where she was like this engineer and mechanic and techie, but like the camera work didn't accentuate those types of things. The camera work communicated a different message than her utilitarian usefulness.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard many arguments about the first Transformers that she's the actual protagonist, and I actually agree with them. Like, that was a huge mistake.
Anyways, I think she was written as the protagonist, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not what the camera tells you. Yes.
Right.
Sure. So, when we translate this over to war games, I think of ludonarrative dissonance as the difference between what the story is telling you. Oh, Megan Fox. Yes, thank you. A lot of people, of course, just shouted it out. Yes, that was her name. Thank you, everybody. I think about this as the difference between what the story is telling you about the world, the lore, or whatever, and the way the world works, versus how the game plays on the table. All right? How your models act, how their rules function, and so on and so forth. Right? So I'll straw man this to lay us down an easy example. Right? I won't use anything real. Like, we're going to talk about real stuff. Let's say in the story you had some character that was just an absolute, just, Billy Badass, just absolutely kills everything it comes up against, unstoppable machine of death, right? And then they made rules for this thing, and it had like 4 attacks. What's that?
Is he a dwarf?
No, I'm making an imaginary example of it.
Right? I know you are. Yep.
And so, like, yes, let's imagine that's the case in the narrative, and then you get the rules, and it's like, well, he's got 4 attacks on 3s, neg 1 damage. 2 damage each. It's like guarantee 3. It's like, okay. That, it's like, he's got a 5-up save and a move of 5 inches, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, he's not doing anything.
Now, that's the basic, I think, ludonarrative dissonance. When the story and the play don't align properly, right? I think there's actually a second version of this here, which is slightly different in a nuanced way, but it's something I don't think they often think about, or we don't often think about. And it's when an army seems like it should play versus how it actually plays. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at the aesthetic of the units, right? The range of the units available, and kind of, so like this is, I'm taking out the fluff. I'm not talking about the story or the narrative. You could have never read a story, right? You're literally just looking at the models and how they seem to look or feel, or how in your mind they would act, right? Like, if I just took them to a random person and said, this is part of a game, what does it do in that game, right? What they would give me. They don't know the narrative, okay? And then how it actually acts. Does that make sense? I think either one of those can produce ludonarrative dissonance, right? Because both of them are driving you to act in a certain way, right? Like, the story or this aesthetic sense can drive you to act in a particular way. Like, they would say, buy these things, this is how you should be rolling your army, how you should be thinking in the mindset when you're playing the game. And then you read the rules, and it's like, no, actually do this instead. Right? And I think what got us on this, Tom, I mean, in my mind.
No, it was a conversation in chat today.
Yeah. What specifically triggered this for you, more than anything in the past couple of days?
The massive club of the man-eater. Yeah, the massive club of the man-eater doing 1 damage.
Yeah, of the basic Gargant doing 1 damage.
1 damage.
And then the other giant's Stompa Club doing 2 damage.
Right.
Like, both of them are equal examples.
Yeah, but like, so that club of the giant does as much damage as a goblin spear.
Right. Absolutely. Or even the 2 damage one is sad, because a basic ogre punches you for 2 damage effectively.
Right. Yes, his unarmed attacks do 2.
Effectively, yes. All ogres hit for 2 damage, right? I mean, there is a
Yep.
slight exception. Please don't actually me for the dudes on the back of the Beast Rider whose punches and kicks only do one. I'm aware of that. I'm saying almost all ogres do two. Perhaps even deeper, the Iron Guts with their giant sword, right? Which is not actually giant.
Yep.
It is much smaller, much smaller in point of fact than the massive club on the Mega Gargant.
Yeah.
Hits
Yeah.
for 3 damage. Okay?
Yeah.
It does more damage than the Giant's club. That's
Yeah,
a
the
problem
giant
to me.
club.
The giant
Like the
club.
giant club.
Yes, the Mega
Yes.
Gargant's big club, which is bigger than the ogre wielding the sword. Okay? Hits for less damage than the sword that ogre, who is smaller than the club, is wielding.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yep.
This is the problem. This is
Right.
what absolutely triggered it for me. Right?
So Vince lost his mind in our private chat because like he's like, this doesn't feel like, he's like, I just want to stomp things and I don't feel I can do that.
Right. Like if I'm taking an army of 4-up and 5-up idiots who we don't know what defenses they have, but there's probably some build that isn't very defensive, right?
Sure.
Like I know I'm
Yep.
going to lose my giants, and I'm going to chart. We're talking about an entire army that charts, by the way, which is going to be super
Right.
fun. Okay.
Right.
It will be actually a very hard army to memorize. What your
Sure.
numbers are, because everybody charts all the time. Oh, slight aside, I did love that the Mega Gargants, their bottom part of their chart was 12 wounds. So you have to go
Yeah.
up a third of their chart before you hit before you hit their
efficiency.
first decreased output, which is great. More monsters should be at that third level, right? Or
Yeah.
even drifting toward 50%. So that's an aside, but I was happy to see that. That is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But what drove me nuts was I was looking at this damage output, and I was like, how is this what I want? Like in my head, and this is the thing I said, and I'll say it to everybody here, okay? I am a child when it comes to playing this game. I really am. And I don't take shame in that. I'm proud of that fact. I am Timmy through and through. And like in my head, when I move my big monsters forward, like Tom, I have a love of big monsters.
You do. You do.
And in my
You do.
head, when I'm moving them forward, I'm going rawr when I attack. Like that's happening in my head, and I'm always doing that. Like if I could take the model and go I would do that. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Because that is literally what's going on. That is the soundtrack in my brain as I'm playing. And the only difference is Keepers of Secrets. When they go forward, I hear the Keeper of Secrets from War. If you remember her, that fight, that public event out in the Chaos Wastes.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
She's much more controlled. But anyways, and they just
you don't
didn't
hear,
feel like...
the Ari fight from Lost Vale?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I didn't really like Lost Vale.
That's fair.
So but the thing is, I love, exactly, like somebody shouted out Hulk smash and stuff. Yes, like I wanted to feel like I'm moving forward a big scary monster. I know he can die. Like the damage profile, even on 35 wounds, if any massive unit hits them, if that's literally all
Like,
they are, if they're
if
just
any
35
real
wounds on a 4-up
threat.
save,
If
any real threat hits them, they evaporate instantly. They're gone. 40 skinks will kill them in a round, right? Or like 6 salamanders will evaporate them. They won't even exist. 3 salamanders would probably evaporate them, frankly, if they
Right.
charge with the +1 bonus to hit you can give to Sally's, right?
Yep.
So, like I'm okay with that. By the way, I don't mind when my toys die as long as I
as long as they feel like they're doing what they should be doing when they do it.
Exactly, and that's the key. When they do it, doesn't mean I need to have it happen every time. Sometimes you get bad dice. Sometimes you'll get outplayed. Sometimes people will just surprise you and roll a 12 on a long bomb charge. Right, like these things will happen, and you'll lose your big toys. Sometimes you'll get shot down from across the table. I mean, I was playing big Keepers of Secrets and stuff all throughout 8s when people were still going 10 from the back of the model and just shooting her down top of one with cannonballs. Like I would still play them in every army. Because I loved it too much not to play it.
Right.
And so, excuse me. So I think that's where that dissonance comes from. Like and you can say to me, well, yeah, but as we just showed, you could ramp that damage way up in the War Stomp allegiance, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. I love that. I'm glad that's in there. I am super glad.
But the dissonance is still there if you play anything else but War Stompers.
Correct. Yes. That's the problem. Like, on the base scroll, it still doesn't feel like the thing it's supposed to feel like. Right?
Right.
So I
and
thought
especially if you ally those in, they actually like don't do what's on the tin.
Theoretically, again, we don't know enough about what the allies are going to look like to know for sure. They could have their own profiles, right, with like up to damage because they're special.
Yeah. Right. No, that's fair.
Like, we know the order guy is the Kraken Eater, but who knows? He could have, like, instead of just the normal club, he could have, like, you know, the whalebone club, or of the Sea Titan or something. You know, like, who the hell knows? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
So the I think everybody's assuming, by the way, that the allies are just going to be the direct import, and you know, maybe they will. I'm not saying they're not. I'm saying that's facts, not in evidence, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
We know they're named, so there's no reason they couldn't have unique rules, because most of the time, named versions of otherwise generic things have unique rules. See every other instance of these things in the game. So, just, you know, as a heuristic. Okay. But I want to talk about other instances of ludonarrative dissonance in this game. So I thought we'd go back and forth and just kind of talk about where these things are coming up.
Where we've encountered this?
Yeah, and like our example here with the clubs is kind of specific, right? It's a very... There's this real instant where you run up against it. Why is this club 1 damage? And you and I have talked about on the show 100 times. Monsters should not hit for 1 damage ever, unless it's some weedy thing hanging out on their base.
Right. Unless it's the goblins hanging onto their back.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. If you got a school of fish with you, that can be 1 damage. Cool. Like, that's fine. Okay. Or whatever. You take my meaning, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But, like, there's no excuse for any monster hitting you with a club the size of a literal tree, okay, to be 1 damage when the same damage that a guy defending a Hellstorm rocket battery turns around like his missile stuffing tools or whatever on you and hits you for. Okay?
It's true.
The little wizard on the back of the Hurricanum hits harder damage-wise than the club that the giant is wielding. That's
it's the crotch goblin.
Yes.
On the OBR monster scratching.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so other instances. What else do you what do you have? Go ahead and give one. I got a big list.
I'm going to talk about a weird one.
Okay. Awesome.
And mine is, as in playing against a certain army, I experience this. Okay. And that is IDK.
All right, that's interesting. They're not on my list, but why?
Okay. So when I set up against them, so like tell me what the logic is, how we're to understand their nearest targeting effect.
The second they pass out of your sight, you forget about them. They're like the silence from Doctor Who.
Sure. Fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted. But I don't.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is this. As a player, I am engineering situations in every way to bypass that rule. And so actually, like, as I'm playing against them, I'm experiencing this dissonance. Because I shouldn't know where their other units are.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a very clever example. I hadn't thought about this, but you're right. There's a real interesting dissonance here that's a really cool example, Tom, where what you're saying is you as the player are in a completely different knowledge state, theoretically, than your army is, right?
Yeah. And so my army is making decisions based on me, not on their experience of what the table is showing them.
Right. If we actually zoomed in to their perspective, they would be
Yes.
acting like crazy people because none of the decisions you're making of having them run off around to the side and dive into some weird
Right.
angle just so
Right.
they can
Right.
actually get,
Right.
to make a different model that theoretically shouldn't exist to them, the closest model would suddenly make sense.
Or
Effectively, your whole army is metagaming when you're playing
yes,
IDK.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
My whole army is meta. And not only that, like, here's the even better example. When I fly high with my KO and reset up,
Yeah. Sure.
like, I'm resetting up 9 inches out
Sure.
from something that I don't know exists.
Oh, you're saying like, got it. You mean if you're playing KO against IDK?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
in this world,
Right.
like, what's supposed to be happening and what's actually happening are just simply nowhere in the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
And like, I understand it's part of the rules construct. Like, they're
Yeah,
trying
sure.
to mimic the rules. And like, I want to honor that. They've done a great job in creating what they've created. So don't don't mistake what I'm saying for critique.
Right, right. No, that's really interesting because you're right. Like IDK, when I thought about it, I was like, what a success. It feels like the Aether Sea creeping in like the tide, and that's actually how it plays, right? Like it felt like the story and the rules really tightly aligned. But it's interesting because you're actually taking it from the other person's perspective, and that is a really interesting dissonance.
Right.
Huh.
Right. Because my army shouldn't be making the decisions that they are making.
Right.
And so, like, to better mirror that, in my mind, like, if you were to, like, because we don't just want to critique things, we want to make suggestions. And I think the better way to do it is if they had some type of ambushing mechanic where they could be like, it's Schrodinger's, like, cat situation. Like,
Yeah.
they can be anywhere they need to be whenever they need to be.
So I think, look, I don't know 40K well enough to do this, and maybe somebody watching knows, but I think in Gene Stealer cults, which are all about like ambush and infiltration, I think there's some kind of mechanic where you literally put a couple tokens on the board, and one of them represents your real unit. So you put like 3 tokens on the board, and like one of them actually has the real marking on the bottom. You know what I'm saying? And that's where your real unit is. Okay. But the enemy doesn't know which of the 2 or 3 tokens or whatever you set down. I don't know exactly how it works. Right. I've seen people talk about it. Is actually your unit. So they are operating within the fog of war. Yeah. Cold Shoulder said, the Gene Stealer cult blip system. Yeah. There you go.
Right. Like, and so, like, something like that, I think, would have called out to this better than what the real world that we're in. Right?
Sure.
Where, like, I'm making decisions based on what gets me the closest to the units that I want to kill.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, which is that's not what's happening in the story.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting.
That's my example.
That's a great example. Let me just, that's cool. It's not worse that we're negativing it. It's an interesting point where, yes, the play is different from the story. Right? That is strictly a dissonance. So, just a couple other thoughts here. Ben Barrett, would clashing bases be considered ludonarrative dissonance, for example, grassy field bases inside a metal industrial facility? No, that's just an aesthetic clash, right? Because no part of that has any gameplay side. Like, the traditional definition of this is in video games, it's the story against the play loop, right? Here, it's the story against the play loop. It's the same thing, right? That's just clashing aesthetics. So, like, it'd be no difference than if your army is painted in very wildly different paint schemes or something like that, right? Like, you can have clashing aesthetics, but it's a different kind of clash. Okay. That's cool. John Ashley Smith says, like historical games, or like they put out in the recent GHB, I should state, where players on the same team could only communicate by written messages unless the models representing them were adjacent. Yeah, so that's an interesting way to kind of get around that. Yeah, it's cool. Okay, so here's mine. You ready?
Yep.
Stormcast. Let me dig into that. Most Stormcast. Okay. So let me see if I can break this down a little more. Stormcast heroes are legendary heroes, like mighty, epic.
They were kings.
These are like kings of kings, epic heroes, right? incredible warriors, and like when you read about them and what they're capable of on the battlefield, right? They'll smash bloodthirsters to bits. They're just like a Lord Celestant is. There are not a huge number of Lord Celestants, right? These are massively, massively powerful people. And then you read their rules, and you're like, oh, cool, a 5 wound dude with a 3 or 4 up save. Like, cool. Okay.
Hey, a lot of them have 6 wounds.
Some of them. Not enough. I'll say that. A lot of 5 wound Stormcast characters hanging out. A lot. And moreover, just even the basic Liberator. When you read the stories, especially in the early stories, right? Of like the Realm Gate Wars, what the Liberators were capable of. Like, these were beachhead troops. They would land and they would face horde upon horde upon horde of the enemy, crushing skulls with their mighty hammers, driving them back. And yes, you know, they die, they get lightninged up. Like, it's not that it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
But for every one of them that goes down, they take like 10 enemies with them, or 20 or 30, right? And that's not a Liberator, man. Not even close. Like, not even in the realm of reason. I mean, most things in the game are 1-to-1 with Liberators. Right? You gotta be real weedy to not basically be 1-to-1 with Liberators as far as, like, what you're capable of killing them.
Yeah.
Just most of Stormcast doesn't feel like it should. I like that they all have 2 wounds. That's cool. But you feel it in the army because there's just a disconnect. Yeah, there's just a disconnect. They're not as tough. They don't hit as hard as they should. They don't feel as elite as they should. The story says these are the best of the best, right? These are the result of millennia-long plans of multiple gods getting together and creating a forge like the universe had never seen, right? To alter life itself, to capture souls, to fashion new bodies, and to turn them into the ultimate warriors, to push back the immortal legions of chaos. Right?
Yep.
No. Now, given some part of this, I fully accept, is every battle tome is written in an unreliable narrator fashion. Right?
Sure. Yep. Yep.
They're always written that they are the best. Never trust a battle tome. It's always propaganda for its own army, right?
Yes.
Which is good. But I'm saying even outside of that, in fairly neutral stories, when you hear about them, and here's the real break in the wheel for me, Tom.
Okay.
When you play a Stormcast in Soulbound, right?
You're like,
oh,
I am better.
Son.
I get more points than you.
Yes. Step up. Okay? Like, playing Stormcast when you're in Stormcast in, like, your heavy plate, you're like one of the knights
Stop. So, for our audience, Soulbound is the RPG that Crucible 7 just recently released.
Yes.
This last summer. I recognize that some people don't know about that RPG. And so, in that RPG of the Warhammer world, go ahead, Vince.
Stormcast are a character. As you said, they're built with literally more points than everybody else. And when you meet a Stormcast of the world, or you're playing a Stormcast, and you've got your heavy armor, or your wings, or your thunder hammers and stuff, and you're like, hey, enemies, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Like, that's what's going to happen here. Like, get wrecked. Okay? You want to learn what you want to learn what Sigmar's about? I'm going to show you what he's about at the end of a hammer. And you will just crush people. Crush them. Okay? I mean, like, you will blow through waves of the enemies. Okay? That's what a Stormcast feels like. Okay? And so when you like, that's what really sealed it for me with Stormcast. Seeing them and playing them and stuff like that in Soulbound, I was like, oh, this is a totally different world. This feels like Stormcast. This is what I always thought they felt like. Because there's no ludonarrative dissonance in Soulbound about them. Right?
Yeah.
They feel exactly like the story tells you they should feel. They play exactly like the story tells you they should act. It's
Yeah.
one line, right? Ilya said, "Aren't you really comparing the story narrative versus the narrative of the actual miniatures tale?" No, because I mean, like, unless you mean that the narrative, as in the text, the emergent property of the rules in play, then sure.
So, Ilya, my example is going to be what you just put a pin on. Okay. So, but no, I want to say. Okay. So here's mine about like the story narrative versus the narrative the miniatures actually tell. I'm gonna touch upon something that's been a hot button issue in the Warhammer community recently.
I'm ready.
And that's gender.
Okay. Where are we going with this, Tom? Already, like, I saw myself raise an inch in my seat as I clenched up there.
Like, oh, what are we doing here? There's been a big discussion about like female Space Marines, right?
Yeah, sure.
And people being people. So what's so fascinating to me is that when you look at the story, like when you read the narratives, you have like men and women on the front lines, like just tearing it up and dealing with stuff, right?
Are we talking about in AOS now?
Yeah, in AOS. Like, okay, that's sure. I'm jumping back to our game, right?
I understand.
Like, yes. in any resource, I don't care what you grab, right?
Yes.
The narrative that is spun is one of like equality.
Yeah, sure. That everybody's a warrior against this. Yes. If a race has genders, which not all, if a species has genders, right?
Right.
Which, admittedly, not all species within the Warhammer worlds have genders.
Yeah, like orcs don't. Whatever, they're fungus.
Demons, but like as well. Sure.
Demons, yeah. But so, okay, bear with me here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when you look at the models, they just tell a nonsensical story of gender.
All right.
Because, like, when I look at like a Cities of Sigmar army, first of all, like, and I recognize like a lot of this has to do with the dated character of the models, but like females are either not in the army or they form their own units.
Sure. Like classically, the old high elf sculpts, some of them were were like some of the ones where it was more mixed, and now when you see a lot of new kits, like you look at the new Stormcast Winterless and Sacrosanct, it's very mixed and stuff like that. Yeah,
Stormcast have done very good, but like there's a lot of other things where like even like Cities of Sigmar, obviously all of the dwarves, like we've never seen a female Warhammer dwarf.
I don't know if that's actually true, but okay. I don't know if any of the AOS kits is what I mean. Like there could have been plenty of.
I don't know that any model's ever been created for a female dwarf. I could be wrong, but there might have been a Slayer female model at one point.
Sure, somebody will tell us in the comments if you're wrong.
Yep, that's fair. But like, there are no Nurgle female followers.
Yeah, sure. Like you mean amongst the Rotbringers and like mortals and stuff
like
that. Yeah.
Right. And like, and I could just go down the list, and it just feels weird. Like the story that the world is telling me is different than the story that the model creators are telling me.
Yeah, sure. How much of that do you think is just really the age of the age of a lot of the design? Because it feels like most of the stuff that comes out now,
maybe
they do a good job of matching.
How about Lumineth? How many female Dawn Riders are there?
I don't know. I don't know the Dawn Rider kit well enough. I have no idea. I'm sure Martin could tell us.
Right. I'm sure that Martin will here in a moment.
My honest answer is with a lot of the Lumineth, I'm not sure. Like, because...
sorry. Yeah. No, that's true. Fecula, the Underworld's warband, is a female Rotbringer.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you for that question. There is one in the world.
Sure. Yes, I understand. None of the Blight King models, for example, have a female alternative sculpt or, whatever.
None of the Magath Lords.
Yeah.
And like I don't understand. Like, yes, Glade Guard had it years and years ago, but like, what about the new Lumineth kits? And I couldn't tell you. Yeah, like yes, and yeah. So, and there are some. Again, there are some. And we are getting better, but it feels weird. And so it feels like we have these extremes where we have like either an all-male army or an all-female army. like Daughters of Cain. And it just feels like we don't have a good middle ground.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think Stormcast is probably, interestingly in this case, the big success.
Right. But they had to move. But that's my point. Like, they had to move in functionally the soft re-release of Stormcast.
Sure.
They moved from their prior position of an all-male force.
Sure.
And, like, kudos to GW for doing that. Like, great job. But I just look at my rest of the army, and it's just like I would like to, let me say it this way. I would like to say that my all-male naked dwarf army is the counterpart to the all-female, almost naked elf army.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
But the reality is that most armies are just all-male.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I get what you're saying. That there is a dissonance in the, like, what you're pointing out, regardless of what anybody thinks about what it should be or something like that. I think you've put your finger on a fact here, that there is a difference between the way the stories are told, because you can change what the text of the story is by simply writing a new story, right?
Right.
And what the model kits actually have in them. Like, again, your point is not like, oh, every kit should suddenly be completely balanced or something like that. That's not the argument. The argument is the story is telling me this over here,
right,
and then the model kits seem to say something very different. That is a fact, right?
Right. And so that's the dissonance I experience when I'm building an army, when I'm building the plastic kits. It's just like, what happened here?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Sorry, I'm going for the weird corner cases rather than the mechanical. This does 1 damage.
No, I love it. You brought some your A game tonight, Tom. This is fantastic. Yeah. That's great. No, it is a really interesting point, because what you're saying there is the whole, like, there is simply this difference in between the story and the way the kits are. And it's not all simply historical stuff, although certainly that has some elements of it.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I went for mostly mechanical things, but that's fine. Yep. All right. Let's see. What's my next one? Here we go. Okay, here's mine. We've talked about this before. Blades of Khorne. All. But specifically the way the army plays versus the way the story's told, right? Yep. And is like they are completely opposite directions. It is so not the same army the story tells you it is. Like, the story tells you it's blood-raving, combat-obsessed, skull-collecting lunatics who go forward and are, like, just murder machines given form, right?
Yep.
And you play the army, and it's a fiddly ballet army that relies on you maintaining very careful bubble synergies and pre-planning, like, individual movements with exact machine precision to maintain your exact buffs you need to bring your units up to functional, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, that's just a problem. They have to be, to me, like, the biggest example of hardcore dissonance between what the story tells me they're like and what the rules tell me they're like. Right? Yes, I like Tidings' comment, Khorne, the god of careful synergy. Yes, exactly. He's just mathematical thinker. I can definitely see Khorne up there on his throne. He's got out his, he's doing some trig,
Got his protractor out.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, hold on. All right, yes, not an inch farther, or thou shalt lose my blessings. Right? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yep.
So no part of Khorne works to me. It is the most single ludonarratively dissonant army. Like, I don't think I could pick a whole faction that feels less like its story, that plays less like its story says it feels.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm, like, looking across all the books right now, and I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, it is the most disjunctive of those.
Right. Math for the math god, trig for the trig throne. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't want to see them make a fourth corn book or whatever we're on. I don't even know at this point. That book's run really. Normally the third time's a charm, and we still didn't get there. Uh,
Yeah.
but maybe the fourth time's a charm. Like, tell you what, just give it to me. I'll do it. I'll fix it. I'm willing. Okay. I can get this going. I don't even like corn that much, but I can do this. All right. I'm a neutral party. I guarantee you will get an army that feels more like it should. You're also going to get 480 point Bloodthirsters. I'm going to warn you right now, but they're going to earn that 480 points. It's going to be like when you used to play in Warhammer, like 4th and 5th edition, when your opponent would bring a Bloodthirster, and you're like, oh God, no, why? That kind of thing. So yeah, there you go.
Yep. Okay. Right. Well, I'll do something a little bit more mechanical oriented. And it's a drum that I've beat many times, but damn it, I'm going to keep on beating it.
Sure.
Because it drives me insane.
I'm ready.
And that's the terrain situation.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm ready for this.
So, like,
do you mean faction terrain?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure.
Like, so, okay. The Etheric Sea bringing the boats to the battlefield.
Okay.
Okay. I'm in.
All right. Okay.
Like, I kind of get that.
A stretch, but I can be there.
Yep. Sylvaneth growing entire forests in the blink of an eye. Okay.
Sure.
I'm in.
They're woods. They have the God of Life in their army. Sure.
What compels the FEC to rebuild a bone throne wherever they're going to fight?
Of course, one would
especially, hold on, if they're questing knights.
Yeah, sure.
Out on an adventure, they're not in the royal court.
Right.
Why are they rebuilding thrones?
Yes. I don't know.
Why? Like, okay, Fire Slayer pizza oven. Like,
has to be the most egregious.
It's not. That's the best part. It's not.
Okay, I'm ready.
We'll get there.
All right.
Okay. Pizza oven, like, they made a magical throwaway clause because of how ridiculous it was to rebuild a forge on the battlefield.
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, that the priest guy just goes ta-da, and then a forge pops up.
No, the most egregious is the fact of the Loon Shrine.
Ah, sure. That every goblin fight happens near one of their hidey holes. Yes.
All of them. All of them. This is carved from moon rock.
Yeah. If I was the general of the enemy army, I'd be like, you know what? Let's not fight near that. That seems like that's not going to work.
It's like the hive entrance in not Chiss. What's the race in Rifts? The bug race. I'm blanking on them. The hive. The Zit. Yes, there you go. It's like these Loon Shrines are everywhere.
Yeah,
like they're just like the hive entrances.
Yeah, you look across the landscape and it's just all Loon Shrines. Yeah, like if you're up in Western Canada. Yeah,
right. Like, don't get near the Loon Shrine because if you do, they may come swarming out.
Right. Sure.
Like, but again, what's the worst part of it is it's not just that it's like the entrance to a hole in the ground.
Sure. Because that might be acceptable. It's the giant moon.
Yeah, the moon, which is an asteroid from the moon that has fallen and been carved by them and worshipped.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And, like, I just don't get it.
Yeah. No, they went on this terrain obsession, and I'm really happy to see it not continuing. Because as we talked about during the terrain show some months ago, I don't mind stuff like the Herdstone. Like, that one works for me because you can see how it's just literally propped up. Like, they literally drag it around, and at the start of the fight, they stand it up, right? And you can see the sticks on the back of the thing holding it up, and it looks like it's about the size that the army could drag around with them, right?
Yeah. Yes. You're saying the Herdstone?
Yeah, the Herdstone. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that one. The Nurgle trees, Those don't bother me at all. Like spontaneous growth as the plague spreads.
No, like so Nurgle, I'm in. You know, Mr. Mephisto just said like you're gonna talk about the smack about the Bone Tide Nexus. I'm not, because actually like the narrative there is that they have come to set up to collect a tithe, and so they've set up the shrine to collect their offerings. And when the recipient forces don't comply, that's when fights break out. So actually, like, as egregious in the size of the Bone Tide Nexus, I get the narrative.
Sure.
So I don't experience it as much with that terrain piece, even though it is weird that there's so many bones already there.
I do, and I'll tell you why. Because I read the whole Wrath of the Everchosen, where they're marching around in the Chaos World fighting, and you can recreate every one of those battles in that book, and somehow there's a Bone Tide Nexus in every one of them. They weren't collecting tithe from anybody. They were the aggressors. But sure, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, again, and then the Seraphon Giant Pyramid. Like, if they were spaceships, I'm in.
Sure.
But they're not.
If you placed the spaceship like during the movement phase at the top of one or something, at top of your first turn because it landed.
It landed. Yeah. Done. I'm like, okay, cool. Like this is where we're at. This is the world we're in.
Sure.
Okay. But hold on. So no, whose? That logic doesn't work. He said it teleports in from the Aether. BS, and here's why.
You talking about the pyramid?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't teleport in from the Aether, because if it did, it would never end up on the enemy side for them to occupy.
Right. Its rules very much clash with what's going on there, because you don't know where you're supposed to place it. Like this, just even its placement rules are a good example of ludonarrative dissonance, because let's assume it is a spaceship. And let's assume they have some control over it. Right?
Agreed. Does it crash every time?
Right. Then why does it end up on the enemy side of the table? Like, if that's the story is it's a spaceship that they control. Okay? Now, I know you can also build it with jungle vines, like it landed a long time ago and it's been there forever. If that's the case, it's definitely on your side of the table, because they were definitely fighting near it, right? Like, you went and attacked them where their pyramid is, right?
Right.
But if it's a spaceship, if you're playing like Starborn, where they're just like boop, 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 and they just like land, and then dream lizards fly out of it, right? Sure. If that's what's happening, then that thing should just be in your side of the table. Yep. So yeah, like, to me, it is a great example of ludonarrative dissonance, because the story is saying this is their magical sort of spaceship. They sailed the stars, and they still do, and there's still some of them up there. There's awesome art of like the lizards in space, basically, right? Yeah. Lizards in space. And so, you should be able to place where you want, but then the rules show up and they're like, no, right? They're like, that's not how this works. You've got to go just guess the side, or play safe and put it in the middle, right? Where it makes no sense for it to be.
Right. Like, I just feel the tension. Like, and the terrain feels so forced, and I don't want it to be. As an aside, as an extra addendum to this,
somebody said it has bad GPS. I like that.
clearly. So, as an aside, what gets honorable mention here are the Baleful Realm Gates terrain.
Sure.
Which always teleport 200 yards. So the gates are always queued to 200 yards away.
What do you mean? Why?
Because they're not gates taking you anywhere else. They're taking you.
You're just saying 200 yards. It's a sample. Got it. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because you can see the other end.
The other gate. Yeah, I get it now. Okay. I get it. Yes. They're not like realm gates. You don't like walk in and just end up in Ulgu.
No, it's like a crossing the river gate.
Yeah.
But sometimes no river. Sometimes it's just 200 meters that way.
Yeah, I get it now. Yes, I understand. No, that's fine.
And they're another one where I'm just like, what?
Right. Yeah.
Like, and okay, maybe they're bound to all realm gates. Well, then why don't you just leave?
Sure. All right. Good. Yes, the other realm equals the other side of the table. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with that. All right.
Oh.
No, that's a great example, Tom. I love it. Perfect. All right, I've got one for you. You
Okay,
ready?
hit me. Yep.
Alariel. Just Alariel.
Just all of
Everything.
it.
All of
Just
it.
top to bottom.
All L'Oreal. All of her.
I accept.
If you were going to make a single war scroll that was attempting to capture Ludonarrative Dissonance in its most distilled form, if you had like distilled it out and distilled it out and distilled it out, right? Just filtered and filtered until you just had pure grain Ludonarrative Dissonance. It's like as close to 200 proof as you can get. That scroll would be Alariel. Goddess of life, one of the like Council of Sigmar, one of the survivors of the old world.
A god in her own right.
Yeah, like controls an entire realm, right?
Yeah.
And you read her war scroll, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. She'll be dead by the top 2. That's fun. Good times. She might make a woods at some point. That'll be fun.
And you know what? This is her aspect of war.
And this is her war aspect. Yes, I know. Like, everything about her is... The only thing she has that isn't dissonant is her little seed pod she can drop to summon a thing. That works, that I buy.
Yeah.
That's the one thing on her scroll that I have zero problems with, and I'm like, yep, completely in. But everything else, from the, like, just her damage capability, to her spell casting, to her self-healing, everything. It's all... It's all... This. It's all just this. She has got to be the worst example of this. So yeah, I mean, we've talked about fixing her before. There's so many ways she could be better. Please do any of those things. Thank you. So there you go.
Yeah, no, I agree. Ugh. Yeah.
Okay. I was just reading Mef's comment. All right.
I did.
You got any others?
Yeah, it was mentioned in the comments, but I can't go on a rant without mentioning it. Why does Nagash only raise humans?
Oh, okay. Sure. Like, why are all of the skeletons and zombies and everything all human skeletons?
Humans! All of them! All of them!
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Like,
sure.
Elves? Nah. Don't want elves. Not interested in dwarves. Like, clearly...
Elves, dwarves, coalesce, Seraphon, ogres.
Orcs. None of it. None of it. He wants none of it. He only wants human skeletons.
Yeah, indeed.
And I'm like...
Obviously, the last time we got other skeletons was in Dogs of War or whatever, when we had that super cool unit of the mixed race skeletons.
But no, like, let's do the call out to the bones, like the skulls box.
Oh, absolutely! I was just about to reach for it for this exact story. Yeah, when you go to the skulls box,
right here. Okay, like when you go here, look, there's a lot of other. Right? Other things.
Like gore skulls and orc skulls and like plague bearer skulls. Somehow there's plague bearer skulls.
Yeah. Like tons of orc skulls. There's even some tau skulls in here.
Sure. Yeah. Bloodletter skulls. Yep.
Yeah. I don't like poor Nagash. Like, does he just not win against those other armies?
I think that was why they actually made OBR. Because when they made OBR, they were like, we don't have to worry about only humans anymore. Because they're just mishmashes.
The logic is they're reshaping the bones into these other forms. Yep. Cool. That kind of fixes it.
Yeah, it does. Because they're just collections of bones, right? And there are also different sized bones and stuff like that. Like when you look at that, you mentioned the Harvest earlier. When you look at him, he's clearly not constructed solely from human bones, right? Like there's all sorts of different crazy bones that are part of it. And so, that one works. But the regular skeleton kit and all that kind of stuff all still being, just humans. He's only doing humans. That's all we got here. So, I mean, I think we've for years talked about how much we'd love to see the Dread guys, or I don't remember the exact name of the unit, but whatever it was that was the collection of the different.
Yeah, the old the Dogs of War.
Yeah, the old Dogs of War unit. Yes, their exact name I do not remember. I think I have most of them still. I know I've still got the lizard skeleton and the dwarf skeleton. I don't know if I still have the elf skeleton, but I think I have most of the units still. So yeah, no, it's a great. That's very funny, because in the story, of course, I mean Nagash kills and raises freaking everything, right? Like everything, and has zero problem with that. Like if you're a living thing, you're just waiting to be raised as one of his soldiers, right? So, sure.
You got anything else?
I do.
Okay. Yep. Hit me.
Okay. Daughters of Cain in Hagnar. Okay. Like you look at the story.
They have the blessing of Cain.
Clearly, you look at the story of the Daughters of Cain, and they're blood obsessed murder cultists who are just all in for all on the O. No defense, right?
They're all about the O. Yes.
Correct. All about the O, no D. And it's just a lot of women getting together, all about the O, absolutely no D. So this is the state of affairs. I don't know what you're laughing at. So they're
true,
and yet then you play against that army when it's in Hagnar, right?
Yeah.
And you've got bikini clad murder women who are on who are on 4 up, 5 up, 5 up saves, and you're like, what is going on here? This is one of the toughest units in the game. By the way, this just repeats over. You mentioned that sort of that Fire Slayers are kind of like the naked male equivalent, right? Yeah. This is the same story over on the other side of the equation with the stupid Hearthguard Berserkers. Truly my least favorite unit in Warhammer.
The less clothes you have on, the tougher you are.
Right.
Did you not know that?
Right. Where you can easily be fighting Hearthguard Berserkers. Easily. Now, like, this isn't just off the scroll. There's some synergies here, obviously.
Yep.
But, there you go. Yeah, Halo said, in malign importance, by the way, Nagash resurrects an entire Beast Claw Alpha Stun. Yes, so, like, all the ogres, all the monsters, all everything. Anyway.
No, he doesn't. I've never seen it on the table.
I've never seen that skeleton on the table. I disbelieve it. So, no, the, these Hearthguard Berserkers, you'll often be fighting these naked baby Cupid doll dwarves that are on like 3 up, rerolling 1s, 4 up after saves, and I'm like, what is going on here? Meanwhile, the Halls of Justice, the heavily armored guys in the game, right? Like all
the
of
Stormcast Eternals,
right? All of the people in the game who are supposed to be like the super heavy armored dudes, not all. There are a couple exceptions here, right? Are often just on a 3 up save. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? Or on a 4 up save. They're like covered head to toe in armor. Look bristling with steel, like they're just threw a foot of steel, a foot of armor around them. It's like, oh wow, that guy looks really tough. Yeah, he's got a 4 up save. Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, great. He's not so bad.
Great. Like I just yeah, Cinnamon said, this is why Liberators are so weak. They're wearing far too much. Yeah, they need to get rid of that armor. They'll get way tougher. So, yes. The whole, like, naked things in the game, because of the way they've written the rules, are often some of the toughest units. And some of the heaviest armored things are some of the easiest to blow through units.
Yes. Yeah, like armored dwarves, as Germ put it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the naked dwarves are way tougher than the armored dwarves. That's not even close.
Clearly, the Ironbreakers need to learn a lesson from the Volkite Berserkers.
Right. If it's not the first turn and tip aside, they're dead.
We're not even talking about, by the way, I'm not talking about the Hearthguard Berserkers.
I understand. You said
I'm talking about the Volkites.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Well, so Kieran said in D&D terms, it's how the rogue can have a higher armor class than the fighter. That can happen. Sure, absolutely. But I would posit that let's take the average, let's take the sort of high outcome of D&D. A rogue wearing leather armor, the standard armor they would wear, right? Or studded leather or whatever, sorry. With a 20 dex has a 17 AC. a fighter who simply puts on plate mail and has a 10 strength, 10 dex, and 10 con, right?
Yep.
Who simply puts on plate mail and picks up a shield has an AC of 20. Right?
Yep.
That's correct. Yep. Now, sure, can that get off kilter? Absolutely, but like the only way you're getting AC 30 in a game is a fighter in plate mail, right? I should say the only way. There are all sorts of weird ways to cheat AC, but that would be the sort of standardish way. At any rate, this game doesn't follow the same logic. So, there you go. All right. I have a couple more. I have a couple more quick hits, Tom, and then we'll call it. But yeah, go ahead.
If you I have a quick one.
Sure.
The fact that Barak Thringi makes all like half of their armies walk to battle.
Sure, that they can't get on the boat.
They can't get on the boat.
Yeah.
And so you can have Duard in your army, but they all have to walk.
Right. You can just see the ship like floating above them. Like, you guys want to hurry up here? We're trying to get to this fight.
Double time. Come on, folks. Let's go. I get it. I understand why balance-wise they didn't want to, and I understand why they wouldn't let allies on the boat in other Baraks.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Sure, because they're not trusted.
Like, they don't trust them to be on the boat.
Yeah.
Got it. That's not the story of Barak Thring.
Right.
Like, that's not what's going on. And so the fact that they make the Ironbreakers like walk to battle, what? Like it could have been such an interesting like thing, not only like not only narratively but mechanically, but they didn't.
Sure.
And it has all the other like tech pieces like guarding against the edges. Of like, like you can't deploy closer than 9 from the enemy. Like, so you still had all those other things. So like the tech even of doing that wouldn't have done a whole lot.
Sure. It would just been neat to be able to put Ironbreakers in your ship.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could have like Marines, actual like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Nope, I'm with you. That's super. That's a really great one.
Where like, nope, you got to walk. Sorry, boys.
Right. Sure. Yep. So then here's a couple quick hits. Ready? The steam tank, not a tank, not bad at shooting, not survivable, not a tank. Okay, so there's one. That's a little one. Chaos Warriors and Varangard, 1 in 10 million or whatever that become a Varangard. Get out of here with those numbers. That's ridiculous. The story on Varangard is way, way, way overblown for what they actually are. Same with regular even Chaos Warriors. Just get out of here. You're one of the worst units of the game. Rules-wise, you're terrible. You couldn't fight your way out of a wet paper bag. And you're kind of tough. Like, okay. And finally, almost any healing in the game. All healing in this game is more or less... shouldn't say all. Most healing in this game is pretty weak. All right?
Lackluster.
It's a shame because it's balanced in exactly the wrong way. What I mean by that is oftentimes unit restoration can be really strong, right? Where if you don't kill the unit, this is the classic undead thing, right? If you don't kill the unit completely or something, it can often go from like one model way back up or whatever. You can pick your exact way, right? Or you do kill the model completely or the unit completely and then it just pops back up back on a gravesite or whatever, right? But healing of an individual character is almost always underwhelming, right? And where this really bothers me is that in the story, these things like vampires that can drink blood or drink their chalice of blood, or Alariel who can self-heal or whatever, like all these self-healing trolls that regenerate, like you lop off a limb and they regenerate it back in seconds or whatever,
Yep.
All of these things, actual healing is just so weak comparatively. Because they're just very afraid to push the green button on single models. Right?
Yeah. And the army you would expect it, which would be like something like Stormcast, right? Like the very because Stormcast are like the very like stereotypical like paladin cleric.
Yeah, sure.
You just don't like it's just minimal at best.
Yeah, minimal if it even exists. And again, I go back to Soulbound, where if you want to see what healing looks like in this world and what it's capable of, go
Worship
watch
Sigmar.
yeah, worship Sigmar and go watch Skaven of Sigmar, take an entire party from nearly dead to full health every round like it ain't a thing, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Playing a
It's true.
healer in Soulbound is like what healing should feel like in this game, and it
You
does
feel like
not.
you're channeling, Sigmar himself.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
As opposed to a little lightning storm.
or as opposed to like D3 healing, I rolled a 1. Okay, tick. Great, great. Of my 14 wounds, I got 1 back. Yay! Just like
Yep.
what?
Yep.
So yeah, um, the that's my list. I'm sure there's more, but that was the ones that I came up to.
Yeah, like Skaven don't backstab.
Oh, their
Like
own
that's
models? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, like it's a big part of their lore.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
that really is like the treachery of the like of the like survival of the fittest like
sure.
style thing like is a real big part of who they are, and it has no like practical outworking. And I'm not
It
asking
used
for
to.
like
They got rid of it. Like
animosity.
there
I
used to be a
understand.
rule. Yeah.
I understand, but I'm saying that like that has hung on narratively, but has evaporated from the how the army plays.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if we're going to talk about successes, I think Skaven still rank as one of the big Ludo narrative successes. There's no dissonance
I
there.
mean,
Like, I don't disagree with the point you've made, but when you think about them, like the way they generally play, it's like, oh, they're this unending swarm of rats that just throws bodies in front of stuff so that their other things can shoot you and that
yeah,
monsters come in and do that. Yes, that's exactly how they play. Their magicians are
yeah,
powerful. Their demon lords are capable. The scryer inventions push themselves to the point of
yeah.
exploding and kill themselves. Like scryer itself is a perfect
Can,
ludonarrative harmony.
can we talk about how they never run?
Oh, how they're just like immune to battle shock?
Actually, from multiple sources, not just one.
Sure. Sure. I mean, when the right things are there, I don't have a problem with that. They always had those high strength in numbers, and those a bit like when the appropriate tools are there, they didn't run. I'll say though, if you've ever played and watched those tools disintegrate, they flee fast.
Sure, they shouldn't have inspiring presence.
It just shouldn't be a thing in the army. I
Yeah,
wouldn't care.
no, just like OBR loses like
Kid
stuff.
doesn't take battle shock tests. Like
Right,
the Skaven should not be able to access that generic command ability.
right. They just don't have it. There is nothing in. They don't inspire one another to
Yeah,
heroism.
that's interesting. I mean, I don't, or like, I would also accept if they just had their own version of it. The only way it did work was a commissar like thing where, like some rat kills one to
Sure,
put the rest into place or
sure.
something, to
Yep,
make them
yep,
fear it more.
yep.
Yeah, I'm down with that. But I think they're
Well,
a
and
success for the most part.
for the most part, cities of Sigmar. So these are about like the like metropolitan, like racially diverse communities, right?
Yeah, sure.
Then why are they all so racist and sit at their own like lunch tables?
What do you mean?
All the units are like racially
Oh, sure. Again, the
subdivided.
difference in the
Like
models. Sure. Yeah, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Like there's no like again, like they're all equal and they're all metropolitan, but they all only eat with their own kind.
Yeah,
Like they all
you
only
don't get a unit of great swords that's part elf and part dwarf and everything like that,
right.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Nope. All, they're all humans,
Yeah.
and the elves won't touch them with a 10-foot pole.
Yep.
Like, and like you can model this difference,
Sure.
but it's
And lots
it's
of people
not,
have, and that's fine.
and a lot of people have, and that's fine. But it's also not in the keywords,
Yeah.
and so like there's a point at which like it that the game mechanics need to mirror what you're telling me, and the reality is like only even mixed units of elves and humans and dwarf greatswords only benefit from human generals.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's just like I feel it when I build Cities of Sigmar.
Sure, I get that. That's fair.
And so like I don't know, and I don't know the right solution to it. Like, but I like, we joked around about like the ghettoization, like when we went to AOS, of like the ghettoization of armies, where everything got broken into like these sub-unit nuggets. And it feels like what they've done is they've taken a bunch of these nuggets that they broke up and jammed them all together into the Cities of Sigmar book. And they're still just those disparate nuggets under a overarching, functionally smaller Grand Alliance book.
That's fine. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I think I give it more of a pass naturally just because of what it is, but I can see it. So,
And
I
so
get
like
what
I just like I don't know, and I don't know what the solution. Like GW, I don't have a solution for you here.
Sure.
Like I don't know if the solution is like upgrade sprues. Like, is it worth it to have like diversity upgrade sprues available through Forge World, where it's a bunch of heads, like gender mixed heads with a handful of additional bodies and stuff like that, in order to like diversify, like bodies that are made to work with certain bits sets, right? So like bodies for your great swords that are meant to use like the sword arms from the Wildwood Rangers or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the point being that like I just wish, I don't know, like I feel the disjunction when I build that army, and it makes me want to just convert everything and ignore, like, to basically scratch off all the names and just remake the army in my image, because I feel so much dissonance with what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I'll say that the armies to me that feel super successful are like Ironjaws and the general Auric War Clans feels very successful.
Yeah.
Like when you read how you read their story, how they're supposed to act, then you play the army and you're like, yep, that's what it does. And by the way, that's Bone Split as well, Ironjaws.
Gloom Spite fits that. Like,
yeah,
other than the stupid shrine.
For the most part, Destruction actually doesn't suffer from this very much, because their story is they're very destruction-y, and like the goblins are very cunning and do what they do and have their little mixed forces, and it's like, yep, that's mostly how it plays.
Yeah.
So like Destruction doesn't trip this as much for me. Flesh Eaters doesn't actually feel that bad to me. That one feels pretty much like on the story, their story being crazy.
For me though, like my question is where's all the eating? Like that was the first thing that I thought about, like, because I see
not enough active cannibalism in the army.
Not enough active cannibalism.
Yeah, sure.
Now that said, like Feeding Frenzy, which is the staple to the army, is exactly eating.
Sure.
So originally that was on my list, and when I looked through, I had to back off of that because there is actually the Feeding Frenzy there.
Yeah.
So they do call out to it a little bit here and there, but like I would love if it was just more about cannibalism. Probably don't like clip that into a audio clip, because that would be pretty terrible.
Sure.
But yeah, so Flesh Eater Courts, like there's like it's there.
Yeah, for the most part.
Like
Tzeentch, I think, feels very successful to me. It's a god of cheating, and they cheat in the game. Like it feels their mechanics very much align with sort of what that god is about, right? They've always got a plan. There's always another. The lady is always in a different place.
Cheat.
There's always another cheat, and that's very much how it feels like that army plays. So yeah, I'm with that.
Slaanesh feels right to me. I don't know if it feels right to you.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. The depravities and the depravity and the locust are actually great mechanics that feel very Slaanesh. They encourage you to play like you would think Slaanesh would play.
Yep, I would agree with that. I'm just looking across the books. Maggotkin of Nurgle, the speed's a problem.
The speed is a problem, yes. A lot of the army feels correct, except the fact that they're all Olympic level sprinters.
Well, they are the fastest runners in the Mortal Realms.
Right. Yes, exactly. These guys are knocking out 100-meter dashes like it is going out of style. They are the gold, silver, and bronze every time in every race. Like, what is going on here? What has happened? Yes, I agree. So,
Yeah, so Maggotkin that could use fixing. An army that I think like felt the most right to me
Okay.
was ogres.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we mentioned the destruction thing, but I agree with ogres. You look at like what a
Like,
unit of 12 gluttons does, and you're like, yeah, man, that's what that feels
yeah.
like.
So let me get this straight. They like to eat. When they're not eating, they're motivated to move quicker
Yeah, they're
to
hungry and
eat.
eating is great. Feels very right. Yeah.
Right. When they're eating, they're really enjoying themselves and they don't want to go anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Their terrain piece is a big gumbo pot.
Right. Sure. Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in. Like, just like at least on the glutton like side of the army. The Everwinter feels a little bit weird narratively, but that's
That's fine.
that's
Matt
fine.
Fast, if we already talked about Gorgons, I didn't specifically mention him, but I put them into the same thing as the monster category we talked about earlier. I did have them on my list, but Cygors and Gorgons, obviously a total and complete miss. Yes, for
Yep.
obvious reasons. In the stories, horrible, frightening monsters on the table, jokes. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Slaves to Darkness feel about right.
Depending on what you're playing. Like, Chaos Knights now feel right, especially in certain
Yep.
allegiances. Like, you will explode
Yep.
units when you hit people with Chaos
Uh,
Knights.
Marauders, competing with Nurgle, unless they're in Nurgle, and then they truly are it is they're really fast. I'm
Yes.
just gonna stop there
Yeah,
before
sure.
I go
It's a
anywhere
problem.
that I shouldn't. Yes, they're really fast, and they are the Mortal Realms medal holders.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, I think that's pretty much Ludonarrative Dissonance. I'm sure there's more that we haven't discussed. If you've got your own examples of this, drop them in the comments. Give us some examples of that. This has been a really great chat. Everybody's been talking, and I really like people have been really engaged, given lots of good examples. So I think that's fantastic. This was a fun one. Next week, I'm sure we'll know more giants. Hopefully, this weekend we get Man Who Reads Book, and he reads the giant book. I'm very excited. I hope they send him a copy so he gets to read book. Come on, read book, Man Who Reads Book. We're all hoping for you. Fingers crossed. Read that book. At any rate, thank you everybody very much for watching. Tom, fun as always. This was a great one. To all of you out there, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button. Just swing your mouse over like that far on the screen. Click it. It's so easy and fun. Look how much fun you'll have by clicking that like button. My goodness. There's no dissonance at all in you clicking that like button. So do that. It really helps other people find the show, which we appreciate. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.